In this video, I'm going to be sharing 10 of the worst exercises that you can do in the gym. These are going to be exercises that have the potential to lead to injury in the long term, exercises that just have better alternatives and that are suboptimal for muscle and strength gain, or exercises that target muscles that are already overdeveloped, which can lead to things like muscle imbalances in the long term. So for each of these exercises on the list, I'll be explaining why they're on the list and as well giving you a better alternative that you can do. So before we get started, my name's Charlie, I'm a bodybuilder, BJJ fighter, level 3 personal trainer, have over 7 years of experience in the fitness industry and have helped many clients gain muscle, build strength and lose weight. If you're interested in doing any of those or you'd like to learn more, check the links in the description which will take you to my website where I offer both in-person and online personal training as well as various other services from there. So make sure to check that out, and then without further ado, we're going to start the video with exercise 1. So exercise 1 is going to be a behind the neck overhead press, which is essentially an overhead press, but instead of coming down in front of your head, you instead come down behind your neck. The reason that this exercise is on this list is because when you place that bar behind your neck, and especially if you bring it down low, it does put your shoulder in a very vulnerable position, especially if you were to be using a lot of weight on this or doing a lot of reps or doing the exercise consistently. The reason it's a vulnerable position for your shoulder is because the shoulders are put in quite an abductive position as well as extremely externally rotated, especially when it's behind your neck. Pretty much just put your shoulders in a very unstable and vulnerable position. So if you have any shoulder injuries in the past, you wouldn't be able to do this exercise properly. Or if you were to do it, you'd have to limit the range of motion, which would reduce the effectiveness of the exercise. Even if you don't have any shoulder injuries, if you're doing this week after week, it can have the potential to lead to injuries in the long term. So it's best to just avoid it. So the reason most people do this behind the neck press is to target a bit more towards their rear delts and their side delts when they're doing a shoulder press. Although it will do that, as we've said, it is quite a risky position for your shoulder. So a better alternative would be to just do a normal shoulder press where you're coming down in front of your neck, and then maybe do an extra few sets of rear delts, whether that be a bent over lateral raise or rear delts on the cable or on the machine, to still get a little bit of rear delt work done, but just in a safer way. Next exercise, exercise 2, is going to be a tricep kickback. The reason that this is on the list is because it's very suboptimal for gaining strength and building muscle. It will help you to gain strength and build muscle, but there's just so many better alternatives. So the reason that it's on this list and the reason that it's suboptimal is because it only allows your tricep to go for about half the range of motion. So your tricep takes your arm from a fully bent position into a fully straight position. However, on a tricep kickback, your arm's already starting in a half bent, half straight position. So therefore you can only take it from that position into a fully straight position, therefore only allowing you to go through sort of half the range of motion. Also, it doesn't put any stretch on your triceps at all, which is an important thing for when you're looking to build muscle. I discuss how important the stretch is a lot more in my book, The 10 Secrets of Fitness, which is a free ebook that contains 10 secrets that anyone can use at any stage in their fitness journey to get more out of their training, speed up their progress, optimize their workouts, improve your mindset, your motivation, as well as various other benefits. So again, that's completely free, that'll be linked in the description, so make sure to check that out. So if you're a beginner, this will work in terms of helping you to build muscle and gain strength. However, as I've said, there's a lot of better alternatives. So a better alternative to tricep kickback would be like a rope pushdown, for example, which allows your tricep to go for a full range of motion, or even slightly better than that, any sort of extension where your elbow's above your head, which will place a little bit more of a stretch on your triceps. So yeah, doing any exercise more like that as opposed to a tricep kickback will be better when you're looking to build up your triceps and get stronger in them. So our next exercise, exercise 3, is going to be a decline bench press. So this is essentially a bench press where you set up with your legs higher than your head, so your body's leaning backwards as you're doing it. The reason that this exercise is on the list is because the lower chest is almost always overdeveloped relative to the upper chest. This is because in most bench press movements or pushing movements, it's going to use your lower chest a little bit more than your upper chest, especially if you were to use an arch when you're doing the bench press, which therefore leads to the lower chest being bigger and stronger than the upper chest. So therefore you wouldn't want to do any extra direct work for your lower chest. So generally we want to avoid any sort of decline bench press or a high to low cable fly or anything where you're going to be focusing on your lower chest. You'd be better off selecting exercises and doing exercises in a way which will target your upper chest a little bit more. So all of your chest muscles are involved in bringing your arms from out to in. However, the upper chest slightly brings your arm from down to up, and the lower chest slightly brings your arm from up to down. So by knowing this, you can do exercises that are going to bring your arms together, but also slightly do that upper chest function of taking your arms from a lower position to an upper position. So instead of doing a decline bench press, you could do like an incline bench press, or you could do a push-up like with your feet elevated, or you could do like a low to high cable crossover. Pretty much anything that is going to be tugging your upper chest a little bit more, just to help balance that out. So you're probably going to be a bit stronger actually on the movements that are for your lower chest. As I said, it's going to be a little bit more developed. So therefore, when you switch over to doing the stuff for your upper chest, you might feel like you're a little bit weaker at first, but your time is going to be better spent, as we've said, doing those exercises for your upper chest. And now we're going to be moving on to exercise 4, which is going to be a behind the neck pull down. So this is essentially a lat pull down, where instead of coming down in front of your neck, you instead come down behind it. This is on the list for the same reason that the behind the neck overhead press is on the list, and that is because in a position it puts your shoulders in, especially as you come down lower. So the reason that people opt for the behind the neck lat pull down as opposed to the regular lat pull down is because it will target your back just slightly differently. It will work like different areas of your back, but pretty much everything that we said for the behind the neck shoulder press still applies to this behind the neck lat pull down, and for the same reasons as the behind the neck overhead press, you want to do the variation where instead of coming down behind your neck, you're instead just coming down in front of your neck and doing it like that. If you are looking for an alternative to a regular lat pull down and you like a variation that just works your back slightly differently, you can change 2 different variables to allow you to do that. First would be your grip width. So if you're gripping like on a normal bar, just have maybe a slightly wider grip, a slightly narrower grip. Then the other variable that you can change is the attachment that you use. So most lat pull downs you'll be able to like change the attachment on there. So the most common would be like the straight bar that I mentioned, but you can maybe swap it out for a grip, either a narrow one or a wider one, or a grip that's going to put your hands in a neutral position, or just gripping a normal bar with an underhand position as opposed to an overhand position, or just experimenting with all the different grips that your gym has, as this will allow you to get the same sort of benefit of working your back slightly differently without putting your shoulder in that vulnerable position. Exercise 5 is going to be any sort of plate press, so whether that be like where you see people standing, holding a plate between your hands, pressing it out and coming in, or doing the same on a bench, like lying down, holding a plate between your hands, pushing in with your palms, and then pushing it out. The reason that you want to avoid doing any sort of exercise like that is because for the standing variation, for example, when you're actually pushing it away, it's going to be using your chest very slightly to actually isometrically hold that plate in position, but it's not going to be actually using it when you're doing the pushing motion, as gravity is pulling the weight down, therefore there's no resistance horizontally. And also the more that you extend your arms out, the more it's just going to put strain on your shoulders as opposed to your chest. Therefore it's not a good exercise for building your chest. Same with the one on the bench. When you're actually holding it, you're going to be using your chest slightly to actually hold the plate in position. You will slightly be using your chest to actually push it away, but the weight that you can actually hold between your hands is going to be a lot less than the weight required to create sufficient stimulus to your chest. And therefore you'll be limited by the weight that you can actually hold between your palms, therefore making the exercise suboptimal. So for that reason, a better variation for both of them, you literally just opt for any sort of dumbbells instead, or barbell, as you'll be able to lose a lot more weight in that way, and it will also be safer as you'll be able to hold it more securely, therefore making the exercise more effective and safer. Exercise 6 is going to be any sort of pullover variation where you're across a bench. So the reason this is on the list is because of the position that it puts your shoulders in, especially at the most difficult part of the rep. So when you're lying across the bench and you're lowering the dumbbell down, the lower that you lower it, the more leverage gravity is going to have over the dumbbell, and therefore it's going to be harder as you go lower down. And also as you lower it down, your arm will get in a more and more outstretched position, will be very vulnerable to getting injured. And if you pair this with what I literally just said about it being harder as you go down, it will mean that the exercise is the most difficult and there'll be the most tension on the shoulder in the most vulnerable position, which you want to avoid. And also if you were to fail the rep, it can be awkward because it's not like on a cable where you can just let go. You can try and let go of the dumbbell, but it will still be pulling down on your shoulder in that position. So you generally want to avoid it at all costs. If you really want to do it, I'd say just warm up thoroughly before it. Choose a lighter weight, do a lot higher reps, at least 12 reps per set on that. But a much better variation would be doing lat press on a cable. Not only is it going to be safer, but it allows you to modify the exercise a bit more, so you can be slightly bent forward. You can actually as well move your body around, which is going to give you that bit of leeway to make the exercise more comfortable. Whereas when you're laying down on the bench, you're in that fixed position and can't really move around. Also, when you're doing it on a cable, you can choose like different attachments. You can have like a different grip width. Therefore, there's more variation and more stimuluses for you to actually grow your lats. Exercise 7 is going to be any form of front raise. So this is on the list, similar to the reason that the decline pressing movements are also on this list. So the front raise isn't like a dangerous exercise at all. It will train the front of your shoulder, but the problem with it is that the front of the shoulder is almost always overdeveloped relative to the middle and especially in the back of the shoulder. And therefore, by doing extra front delt work, you're only going to be worsening this problem, creating more of an imbalance, which can also lead to things like postural issues in the future. So the reason that most people do any form of front raise would be to target their front delt, which it will do. It will be a good exercise, either doing it with dumbbells or barbell or on a cable. So it's not dangerous in the fact that the exercise is good and it's safe to do. The only problem is that the front delts, as I said, are quite overdeveloped, especially compared to the back and the shoulder. And therefore, a better choice would be to train more of your rear delts instead. So doing any form of like bent over lateral raise or any form of like cable exercise for your rear delts, just to target them a bit more. So the reason that imbalance exists is because any form of like pushing movement, whether that be like a bench press or either flat or on an incline, or any sort of shoulder press, will be predominantly doing the front of your shoulder. And therefore, they're already getting a lot of work. Also, in pretty much all chest exercises like a chest fly or cable crossover or push up, anything like that, you're also going to be doing a lot of your front delt, and therefore you won't need any extra work for that. Also, most people don't do many exercises for like the back of their delts or any sort of like phase pulls or anything like that. And therefore, the back of the delt is neglected in a lot of cases. Exercise 8 is going to be any sort of side bend movement where you're holding dumbbells in each of your hands. So the reason that you're holding a dumbbell in the first place is to off balance a bit of your weight more towards the side that your body is going to be leaning towards. But by holding the dumbbell on the other side as well, it would mean that your weight would be balanced, and therefore you won't be actually lifting any more weight. Therefore, you may as well just be doing it standing normally without any dumbbells, and also it would just put unnecessary strain on your grip. So if you were to do any sort of like side bend movement, just hold it with one dumbbell towards the side that your body's going to be leaning towards, and then swap it when you're doing the other side. Exercise 9 is going to be any form of like narrow upright roll. The reason this exercise is on the list is because when you put your shoulders in that really internally rotated position and you begin to elevate it up, it can lead to things like impingement and pains in the long term, especially, as I said, if you've got a narrow grip, your hands are going to be closer together and therefore your shoulders are going to be in a more internally rotated position. And as you start to pull, it's just going to create that elevated position, which, as I just said, you want to try and avoid putting your shoulders into. So the reason most people do upright rolls is to target like the sides and the delts, and it is a good exercise at doing that. But a better variation would be, instead of having a narrow grip, to instead maybe make your grip slightly wider, where instead of pulling up and leading with your elbows, you're trying to also like bring your hands up. So your hands are either in line with your elbow or slightly above, as this would just put your shoulders in a position that's not too internally rotated, therefore making the exercise a little bit safer. And then our final exercise, exercise 10, is going to be any sort of like Bosu ball squat or any exercise on a Bosu ball. The reason this is on the list is because when you do any form of exercise on a Bosu ball, you're going to put your body in like an unstable position, and when your body detects instability, it's going to massively reduce its ability to actually like contract your muscle fibers, and therefore like reducing your strength, reducing like how much weight you can do, how many reps you can do, and therefore decreasing the effectiveness of your workouts. So although doing exercise on a Bosu ball can be effective for like improving your balance and coordination and stuff like that, but it's going to be suboptimal if you're looking for like muscle growth or to get stronger. As I've already said, when your body detects that instability, which would be happening on the Bosu ball, you're not going to be able to do as much weight or do as many reps when you're doing it. But although some people feel it a lot in their legs, that isn't actually due to like the muscle burn and the lactic acid build up and the pump that you're getting. It's actually due to like the instability that I've already said, causing your legs to like shake slightly. So a better alternative to doing it on a Bosu ball would just to be doing like a normal squat or normal like push up, if that's what you're doing on it. Pretty much just doing the exercise but without the Bosu ball. So that's going to wrap up 10 of the worst exercises that you can do in the gym. So just a quick recap of all of them that we discussed. We've gone over both the behind the neck shoulder press and pull down. We're going over tricep kickbacks, any sort of decline pressing movement, any sort of front raise, any sort of pullover where you're across the bench, any sort of like narrow grip upright roll, any form of like plate pressing movement, and then we finished up with the dumbbell side bends and the Bosu ball squats. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to subscribe and like. As I mentioned at the beginning, there'll be links in the description which will take you to my website. We offer both in-person and online personal training, as well as you can get your own workout plans, and as well as the ebook I mentioned earlier in the video as well. So make sure to check all of that out, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.